just finding vulnerabilities in a target isn't sufficient. As professional penetration testers, we have to demonstrate that these weaknesses are exploitable and as such justify additional protection. Kaylee provides a number of exploitation tools that can be used to identify weaknesses which allow unauthorized entry into systems. The exploitation tools are found by selecting Exploitation Tools in the application menu. Here we see the Metasploit Framework, the Metasploit Framework Payload Creator, SearchSploit, the Social Engineering Toolkit, and SkullMap. Metasploit is the foundation tool used by penetration testers for identifying weaknesses in systems and provides extensive capabilities for demonstrating them. It operates from a console interface and is supported by a large database of tests that can be selected and used to attempt to exploit a weakness. It can also interface with tools such as Nmap and Nessus to integrate information gathering. Armitage is a graphical tool which leverages the command line Metasploit framework but isn't installed as default in Kaylee. It provides the complete capabilities for scanning and testing target systems, as well as testing privilege escalation and moving laterally from an exploited system into another vulnerable target. The Metasploit framework provides the database of scanners and exploitation modules which can be deployed using Armitage. Let's get hands-on with these two tools in order to understand some of their basic features. Let's take a quick look at Metasploit. The first time Metasploit starts up, it will create and prepare its databases. Otherwise, it will skip this initialization step. To save time, I've already done that. But as we can see, its first startup also requires that Bundler be set up. Let's do this. We'll still see a warning about a deprecated gem, but this should eventually be fixed in a future Kali update. There is one more problem to fix with this Kali release, though. If we try to run Metasploit now, we'll just get a terminal command line. So we need to make one additional change before starting. And that's to right-click on the Metasploit framework in the menu system, select Edit Application, and then change the command to replace msfbb init with service postgresql.start. Okay, that's done, and we'll be able to start up Metasploit. After completing its startup, the MSF prompt appears. Metasploit is now ready for use. Metasploit includes a database of testing modules, assembly, and then coding capabilities 6 to manipulate, exploit, and payload code. And the meterpreter, a payload which provides a powerful remote shell, we can see that it has 1962 exploits and 558 payloads in its database, as well as a number of other modules. Exploit modules are running against the target system to check whether it's vulnerable. Payloads are sent into a target system to demonstrate that the exploit was successful by executing on the target. The first commander I'll enter is help. This shows all the commands that we can issue in Metasploit. There's a lot of commands we can use, grouped into core, module, jobs, resources, and various backend sections. We'll take a look at some of these now. I can selectively search for exploits with a search command. I'll type help search to see how to do this. Let's look for a Windows 8 exploit. I'll enter search Win8. Here we can see the exploits listed for Windows 8. There's only two: the 2012 Ike X Service exploit and the XNSA Eternal Blue exploit. If I enter SearchWin 7, we get a lot more Windows 7 exploits listed, as well as a set of Windows 7 payloads. Let's now use Metasploit to check whether a system's vulnerable. I'm going to try an exploit on my Metasploitable system, and I'll start by looking at its IRC service. Let's see what Metasploit has for us. Okay, so I can see there's a range of exploits for DOS, Windows, Unix, and so on. I'll select the Unix exploit called Exploit Unix IRC Unreal IRCD 3281 backdoor. To do this, I'll enter the command use with the exploit name. Okay, we're now loaded. I need to select the target. In this case, and now, my Metasploitable system is on 10.0.2.8. I can check the targets this exploit works against by entering the command show targets. In this case, the exploit can determine what kind of targets it has, so we can select automatic. Let's set that target type. Let's have a look now at what payloads I can use with this exploit. I see that I have a number of command shells available and a generic command execution. I'll use the info command to get more information on the reverse shell. Okay, so this doesn't need administer privileges, and it creates a shell on port 4444. That sounds good. Let's go select it. I'll now see which options I need to set to use this combination of exploit and payload. I'll have to set the remote and local host addresses. The remote address is February 8th 10, the Metasploitable system. The local host is this Kali system. I know that Kali is running on IP address 10.0.2.15, so I can set this. Okay, let's run the exploit. We can see Metasploit establishing the sockets in the connection and finally confirming that a command shell has been established on the remote system. The first thing we'll do is check that this is the remote system. I have config displays the IP address 10.0.2.8. Metasploitable. Now let's check who we are on the remote system. Okay, we run the remote system as root. Well, that's pretty cool. We can list the processes on the remote system. So we exploited Metasploitable using an IRC exploit and now have complete control. When we finish testing, we can enter Control-C to terminate the remote shell. Armitage is a great visual tool for carrying out both scanning and attacks on targets. However, it's not installed by default in Kali, so the first thing we need to do is download it from the fast and easy hacking site. This is now in my Downloads folder. I'll unzip this into the User Share Applications folder. Okay, we're extracted and ready to go. We'll need to start it using sudo, as it does require privileged operation, and we may need to start PostgreSQL as well, if the service isn't already running. The Armitage screen has a menu at the top and 3 panels. The 4 key modules are shown on the top left panel. The network targets this Armitage knows about on the top right and the Metasploit terminal window at the bottom. We'll run Armitage through its graphical interface, but we can see the equivalent Metasploit commands in the console. To begin with, let's scan the local network by running nmap from the host's menu. We'll select a ping scan of the network by entering 10, 0.2, 0.24 as the range. Armitage has detected and added the hosts on our network. I can now select one of them and go for a port scan of accessible services. I'll right-click on 10.0.2.8 and select Scan. The nmap results are displayed in the bottom console window. I can see the services that have been found on the host by right-clicking and selecting Services. The services information is displayed in the bottom panel. I happen to know what kind of system this is, so I'll also right-click and set the operating system type to Linux. At the top left, we have a tree version of the Metasploit databanks. If I know the exploit I want to run, I can select, for example, exploit Windows, Lotus, and double-click the exploit. Armitage then pops up an attack window, which I can configure and launch. However, Armitage can help us decide on the exploit to use. We have our Metasploitable service selected, and Armitage can check its database and select all the possible attacks for this kind of host. The first thing we need to do, however, is to reduce the attack filter. I'll select Armitage, set exploit rank, and select Poor. I can now find all the potential attacks for Metasploitable. I'll select Attacks, Find Attacks. Okay, Armitage has found the attacks that we can use. We can right-click on 10.0.2.8 and select the Attack submenu. Let's again select the IRC service, and we can see that Unreal_IRCD_3281_backdoor attack has been recommended. I'll click this, and the attack panel comes up. This is everything filled in, so I can just launch the attack. The attack progresses in the lower panel, and eventually the host icon has turned red and is enveloped with lightning bolts. It's now compromised. I can right-click again and select Shell 1 and Interact. And a new tab opens at the bottom with an interactive command shell. And here we are in the Metasploitable system with root privileges. That's a brief introduction to Armitage and a whole world of graphical exploits for you to experiment with. Let's have a look at how an adversary would exploit a Windows system using a phishing attack. I'll use the MSF payload creator to do this. This is a wrapper for a raw tool called MSF Venom. The MSF payload creator can create a payload for many types of targets, and it's typically used to generate payloads with one of two interaction modes. The first is the native command shell used by the target, and the second is Metasploit's meterpreter. This is a powerful shell command language. We'll create a payload for Windows using the default meterpreter mode. We need to tell the payload the IP address and port to connect back to, which will be our Kali system on port 4444. Let's create the payload. Okay, let's finish, and we can see the location and file name of the executable. All I need to do now is to get this onto a target system. For the purposes of this course, I can do it by copying it into my VirtualBox shared folder. And I'll do that as VenomDex. I now have to set up a server to listen for incoming connections from my phishing victims. I'll do this using the Metasploit framework. I'll use the multi-handler and prepare for a Windows reverse TCP meter preater session on port 4444. Okay, we're now waiting for a connection from our phishing payload. I'm on my Office Windows 10 target. And for the purposes of this video, we can see the malware here, the venom.x. In the real world, this attack will likely be through an attachment to a phishing email or come in via a USB stick. When the user of the target system clicks on it, the exploit will activate and make the connection back to the phishing server. I'll execute this from the command shell. We can see that the Venom payload is connected back and started up the meter preater shell. If you want to explore the commands that this shell supports, you can type help. Let's go to the top-level directory and see what we can see. We can also see what processes are running. It might be useful to have a look at what credentials exist on the system. We can do this easily in MeterPreter. Let's start by seeing who we are. Okay, so we're the WinDev user, and we can see the details of the target system. MeterPreter provides a number of active exploitation capabilities, such as taking a screenshot and capturing keystrokes. Let's capture some keystrokes. And we can see the keystroke sniffer has started on the target. Let's go there and type in some words. Right, let's go back to Kaylee. Let's see what we've collected. And here we see our captured text with some embedded control characters. I'll stop the sniffer now. There's much more to Metasploit and its MeterPreter, and you'll get plenty of practice with them in the ethical hacking courses.